Hi kids, Miss Ruby here with an art lesson from the garden. Today we're going to be starting with a sketch from observation. This might seem familiar to a lot of you because it's the first lesson I usually like to do because it's a great way to practice seeing, and once you do a lot of practice this way, you can draw anything. So today we're going to be looking at a Cooper hawk, our lovely mascot, and we're going to be taking the photo and trying to sketch what we see. So the way I usually like to start with this is by looking for the biggest shapes and kind of getting to know the subject. So when I look at the Cooper hawk, I see it has a head, a body, a tail, and 2 wings. And you can see a little bit of its feet, but just barely. So I like to start out by looking for the big things. You can do this by taking a highlighter to the photo that you have printed out and just kind of getting a general idea of the shapes. So this wing is kind of this shape. I see this wing's kind of like this shape, and you see I'm not really paying attention to the details. The body and the head could kind of be looked at as one sort of football shape. And then I see the tail is kind of like a triangle, but it's rounded at the back. So then I take my sketching pencil, and you see I don't even have an eraser because I'm going to do my cleanup or refining at the very end. So don't worry if you don't have an eraser on your pencil, you won't need it yet. So I'm going to start out and try to check out the shapes and see where to begin. So I noticed that the body is kind of the main shape that the other shapes are attached to, so that might be a good place to start. So I noticed that the body is kind of turned. It's not straight up and down. It's kind of tilting to the side a little bit, and it's not huge. I want to make sure I have space on my paper for the wings that kind of go up like this. And you'll notice I'm using really light sketching lines. This is the easiest way to start a sketch like this and not get frustrated, because I can always change the lines, and I don't care if I put them in the wrong place because they're so light that they will be covered up, or I can erase them later. So I see that the tail is kind of attached to the body. It kind of comes out of the body like that, kind of has a rounded bottom, and then the head is kind of attached to the body as well, kind of just like a little oval that kind of sticks out. So I'm getting a general idea of what the shapes look like. Okay, and I always can make adjustments and changes. I never get it perfect on the first try, so don't worry if you have lines again that you don't love. You're going to just make adjustments and revisions as you go along. So I found my basic shapes. I've got the wings, the body, the head, the tail, and now I can start looking for the values. So values are what we call the lights and darks. So with this kind of sketching pencil, I can make a super dark value by pressing down really hard. Could make a medium dark value, medium, light, and I can even use the light of the paper to describe these lightest areas. So those might not get any shading at all. Shading is what we call filling in the values. So I can kind of look for the lights, the mediums, then the darks. Okay, so I'm getting to know where those are. I see that the body is really light and the wings are a little bit darker. So I can go ahead and start shading, start filling in where I see my different values. And as I'm doing this, I can also kind of refine my shapes a little bit. I see that it's not just one oval, it's broken up into these little kind of finger feathers. Okay, and down here it's kind of just like a scalloped edge a little bit. And I can imagine I'm like a little ant walking along the edge of the wing here. Okay, and I see that's pretty dark, so I'm doing a little bit of shading as I go. And with this type of sketching pencil, I can also use my finger to kind of blend that. And you see a lot of the lines that I didn't like when I first started become part of the shading. So they're actually helpful to me. So I'm kind of finding where those feathery fingers are, and I'm asking myself, where does this one end? Where does this one end? I see this sticks out a little bit further. And if you need some help, you can also think of what the spaces in between look like. This kind of just looks like a little cutout triangle. So I can create the shapes of the feathers by kind of cutting out the little triangle shapes in between. And again, this has kind of that same scalloped edge to it a little bit. And coming down here, I see this is another kind of triangular shape, so I can use the negative spaces to help me figure out what the shapes of the body and the feathers are. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I've had about 30 years of practice doing this, so I make it look a little bit easy, but the more you practice, the better you'll get at this. Okay, so I'm looking for general values. Remember the dark, medium, light, and then the white of the paper. So I see this part's pretty dark. I can shade that in. And I'm looking for big stuff first. Big areas of light and dark. And remember, if you have a soft pencil, you can blend a little bit. I see that the legs are a little bit lighter and the spaces in between them are kind of darker. See that the feathers on the head are a little bit darker, and then the stomach is kind of light. And his head is at kind of a funny angle, so I might have to really take a look at that and see what direction does it go. Does it go straight up? Does it go straight over? Does it go kind of diagonal? So I see it doesn't go straight up, it kind of goes over and diagonal, and then comes down, and we see the little beak there. I also want to ask myself, how many eyes do I see? How many beaks do I see? How many feet do I see? In this, I only see one eye because we're kind of looking at the side. And it's kind of right in the middle of his head. Kind of interesting placement because of the angle. And I see there's kind of dark shadow above the eye, so I'm looking for that shape too. And this is when we start to kind of look for the smaller things and refine the drawing. See his head's a little bit darker. There's kind of a light area around his eye, and then up below the beak is a little bit darker. Kind of shadowy under the beak. And this side of the body is a little bit darker as well. So I'm creating this 3D look. Looks like his body is not just flat because of the way the shading is and the way the light hits it. So from there, I can always make changes and adjustments. I see his there's a little dot here, the beak's a little bit darker. And I can always make changes and refine my sketch. Notice I haven't run for my eraser yet because I started light, and then as I get familiar with my drawing, I can darken things. All right, so once you've found your big shapes and you start filling in the main values that you see, those lights and darks, we can start looking for ways to revise and edit or make changes, and also we can look for details. So you can see on this side, I kind of started adding in my details. I was looking at my picture and seeing that there's all this beautiful pattern and detail in the wings, all these little marks. So we started with the big things and now we're looking for those little things. So if I move to this wing, I can see there's no detail here. So you can see the difference of how it looks way more developed the more detail you add. So I'm going to start looking for that, and I see that each feather kind of has its own pattern and design. And I see that the edges of the feathers are a little bit darker. The bottoms of the feathers have this kind of black stripe. So I'm filling that in as a dark value. And I see that there's kind of a stripe that goes along each feather where those dark values are. So I can kind of go along and follow that pattern. I gave myself a guide or an idea of where those lines might fall, and then I can just kind of sketch in the dark values. So it's also a good time to revise, as I said, and that means making changes. So if there's any part of your sketch that you don't like, it means it's not done yet, and it could use a little bit more work, a little bit more detail, or maybe you need to look at your photo and see what the differences are. Is there anything that you notice that could be changed? So we can go ahead and kind of revise and edit. So I'm making a little bit more clear where the feathers are. So I noticed that that was something that was different. So as you go along and add more detail, your drawing will really come to life. And again, if there's anything that you don't like, you can make changes, or anything that, any lines that stick out from the beginning, you can always go back and adjust those at the very end when we take our eraser out. But I'm kind of looking at my image, looking at my drawing, looking at the photo, looking at my drawing, and trying to find which parts from the information in the photo that I want to include in my drawing. So once you think you've kind of included all the details, you want to take another look, and I say, oh, I missed a couple, so that's something I might go back for. We're kind of checking up on our work as we go along. And then, if you think you've completed the drawing, you kind of like what you see, you don't need to edit anymore, you can go back with an eraser and clean it up. Okay, and that means finding any lines that I didn't like from the beginning sketch, and I can kind of erase those and clean those up. My eraser can also work as a blending tool. If I use it really lightly, it can kind of smudge and fill in some of the values. I can also use my eraser to draw light. So here where the body is so light, I could erase away any value that I had, and it's like I'm drawing the white of the paper. All right, so we may have the opportunity to take this to the next level and use the image or whatever you draw to make a sticker or something else graphic in that nature, meaning more bold and more kind of like a design. So I want to show you guys how, instead of using these 4 or even 5 values, if we simplify it down to 3 values, our darkest, our medium, and our light, I can take the image and kind of make it more bold and more like a design. So what I'm starting to do here is take my Sharpie, I've got a regular fine point Sharpie, and I'm finding my darkest darks, and I'm kind of drawing over those darkest darks, and I'm still kind of using my photo as a reference too to find these darkest darks, but I'm going over those darkest darks with my Sharpie and creating an even darker value, and then my drawing becomes a lot more bold and simple. So if you want to take it to the next level, you're welcome to use a permanent marker. There's a fine point or even an ultra fine point if you need that for like the really fine details. Then you can go over your drawing and add in those darkest values. Anywhere that's light will stay light, and anywhere that's kind of shaded medium will just kind of stay medium. So I'm looking in my drawing for the darkest darks, kind of filling in my shadow areas, and I'm going right over my graphite pencil. So it really has to be a permanent marker for this to work, otherwise it won't go over the shine of the graphite pencil. So your sketch here should take at least 15 minutes. And remember that you're looking for your 4 different values at least, your super dark, medium, light, and even the light of the paper. Our goal is to try to create a really developed drawing that gets its information from the photo. But of course, this is your own drawing. So once you do your sketch, you can kind of take it to the next level and make it more your own. If you guys have any questions, just feel free to contact me, and again, I'll leave you with some tips. Okay, talk to you soon.